I'm Kathy Catu, and I'm part of the steering committee for Growing Energized. And a few years ago, Growing Energized realized that we really do have a mental health crisis in our community. And we started to look at opportunities to really address that in a way that maybe some of the other resources hadn't been quite yet. And what we looked at is how could we help people early stage? We have a lot of resources for crisis line, suicide prevention work, but how can we help people early on, and how can we help reduce the stigma that comes alongside that? So what we did was we found a presentation called Make It Okay. It was developed by Health Partners over 10 years ago, and it's a free resource that is available to anyone, any organization throughout Minnesota to start to reduce the stigma. So as we talk about this, what we're really talking about is let's make it okay to talk about mental health. So to really start to dig in, we're going to do two things. First, we're going to learn about it, then we'll talk about it. And then the challenge to you would be to share what you've learned and start to open up those conversations. So let's start with some of the basics. First, mental illness is common. 1 in 5 people, adults 18 and over, in the United States will be diagnosed with a mental health concern. Now that's those who are diagnosed, and we know that a lot of people don't seek help or don't ever have that diagnosis. It's important to know that it is treatable, that life can get better, and that stigma is one reason that people delay getting treatment. And that falls to all of us to really look in the mirror and understand how we play a role in that. It's important that we talk openly. That helps to reduce stigma. And reducing stigma ultimately can save lives. It's never too late and it's never too early to get help for a mental illness. There is no rule that says you need to be in crisis in order to call a support line, a text line, reach out for help, make an appointment with a counselor. It's never too early. So let's talk about stigma a little bit more. Stigma is a negative perception that causes someone to devalue or think less of the whole person. It's stereotyping or labeling because of someone's condition. So think about not just people that might be going through your mind right now who maybe you know have struggled or you suspect have struggled, but I really want you to reflect on how this impacts you directly. Have you struggled with a mental illness? And have you talked about that? Have you felt stigma that has delayed you in asking for help personally because you don't want to seem weak? So think about what comes to mind when you picture a person with a mental illness. Think about that. The media has really given us a picture, haven't they? But the reality is, it is people that we know as celebrities, people who are successful athletes, it's our neighbors, it's our family, it's our friends, and it's ourselves. It's okay to have a mental illness because many of us do. The latest research that Growing Energized and the Growing County have done together to address what some of the issues are in Growing County has found that mental illness does occur in more than 1 in 4 adults in Growing County. And right now, depression and anxiety are more common than diabetes. Nationally, 1 in 5 adults experience a mental illness. So as you think about that, have you or a loved one ever struggled with a mental illness? Maybe someone in your immediate family, a close friend, a coworker, you yourself. As you think about that, think about if you are more comfortable helping someone with a physical injury than with a mental health struggle. And what about the community at large? Are people in our community caring towards people with mental illness? Would you agree with that? Disagree? Do you feel like you're not sure? And most importantly, as you look in the mirror, would you see yourself as weak if you had a mental illness, or if you do have a mental illness? And we come from a Midwestern culture where you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And we don't always talk about the real things. We can talk about the weather, we can talk about gas prices, but talking about personal struggles is a challenge. So let's talk about it. What are some slang terms you can think of that are used to describe people experiencing a mental illness? Safe space. Sometimes they're derogatory terms that we hear a lot and we don't really think twice about. Maybe crazy. What are some slang terms used to describe people who have cancer? We look at that very differently, don't we? We say things like courageous. They're a fighter. But both cancer and mental health are physical concerns, and in both cases, need help. A public survey showed most people thought mental illnesses were related to stress, lack of willpower, or weakness. So, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But it matters that we reduce the stigma so that people who are waiting to seek treatment can feel comfortable reaching for help. If they don't, oftentimes they can experience isolation. Perhaps they lose their job, loss of income along with that. Maybe they drop out of school. Sometimes situations lead to jail and even suicide. But it's okay. It's a medical illness. It's not a character flaw. Mental illnesses are biological in nature. Your brain is an organ. And some of the situations can be from the environment, from genetics, from chemical imbalances, and from trauma. So think about that in our Midwestern culture. If we're not talking about it, and genetics can play a role, we're not helping our next generation really understand if we're not talking about what's happening with us. I think about, I come from a line of family where my grandmother had dealt with breast cancer. That was important knowledge for me to have so that I can be on top of that, so that I can be diligent in my screenings and taking care of my health. If mental illness is part of your biological trait in your family, talking about that helps people identify early on when they need help, helps people understand that they may be more at risk for developing a deeper mental illness, and can really help people in the long run feel comfortable asking for help. So role model that within your own family. So what are the symptoms? How do we know? Number one is a change in sleep. I often hear from people who have dealt with a mental illness for many years that their first indication that maybe it's time to readjust things is when sleep patterns change. Either trouble sleeping, oversleeping, significant sleep disruptions. It can also be a change in energy or appetite. We also see people have a lack of interest or pleasure in things that they normally enjoy. They may have difficulty thinking, concentrating, or remembering. And there are physical indications as well. It can be a pounding heart, it can be sweating, trembling, dizziness. Depending on the mental illness, people can deal with delusions or hallucinations. Maybe they have grandiose plans. Sometimes persistently being sad, or impulsiveness. There are a number of mental health disorders that have diagnosis, and those include anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, eating disorders, ADHD, borderline personality disorder, postpartum depression, and obsessive compulsive disorder. And of course, there are situations where people have multiple diagnoses. But it's okay because mental illnesses are treatable and life can get better. Did you know? Most mental illnesses can be treated effectively with medication, therapy, diet, exercise, and support. Recovery is possible. So how do we support someone who's dealing with a mental illness? Well, first, stop the silence. Call it out. Ask about it. Be nice. Listen. Being a good listener can make all the difference. Keep in contact. Maybe somebody shared a struggle they've gone through, and a few days later you send a text just checking in with them, or ask to meet for coffee and see how they're doing. Don't ignore it. Do offer to help. Could I drive you to an appointment? And keep the conversation moving. So let's talk about it. The Make It Okay website has a number of videos where people with lived experiences through all the different mental health concerns share their personal stories. They share stories of what it's like to live with that type of a mental illness. They share stories about where they've struggled, or maybe people have said things that just are hurtful. So if you visit the makeitokay.org website, you'll be able to find videos on all that. And in one of the videos, they talk about hurtful language. And what do we say that can be very hurtful? Saying someone's crazy. Saying someone's psychotic. And even the term committed suicide. There was a survivor of a family member who had died by suicide who shared, felt like you're saying they committed a crime. But in reality, they lost their battle with depression. And sometimes that is a courageous fight. So what can we say, and what should we avoid saying? If someone starts to share with you the challenges that they're facing, thank them for opening up. It's a pretty brave thing to be able to share what's on your heart. Ask how you can help. Ask if they want to talk about it. But avoid saying things that really de-emphasize the importance of what they're sharing with you. You don't want to minimize what they're saying. So some things that we should really avoid saying would be, it could be worse. Or snap out of it. Or everyone feels that way sometimes. Maybe everyone does have moments of feeling anxious or sad, but not everyone feels that way. And really understand that for this person, that is their personal feeling. Acknowledge that. And also avoid saying, we've all been there. You know, I talked to some community members who have spent some time in inpatient mental health facilities, and they shared that everyone gives advice, but few people walk alongside them. And one thing they brought up is people will often suggest exercise. Have you tried going for a walk? And I remember one wonderful young lady said, I wish someone would say, would you like to go for a walk with me? Walk alongside. These are hard conversations. And many of us aren't mental health professionals. I sure am not. But I'm happy to have a conversation with someone. And that takes some practice. So let's practice. Let's think of a scenario. You have a friend comes over, and they say they haven't been feeling well lately. They say they've been diagnosed with anxiety, and sometimes it feels like their heart is pounding, and they feel like they're having a heart attack. What do you say? The most important thing you can do is listen. And when you don't know what to say, just ask more questions. Tell me more. Tell me what that's like. Is there something I can do to help? Keep the conversation going. Now, if you have someone who is talking about how depressed they are and you feel like there is a risk there, it's okay to ask them if they've thought about suicide or if they've made a plan. You're not planting the seed. You're asking a question that they're probably going to honestly share an answer to. and keep the conversation going. The research shows if you can keep talking to someone, that feeling will eventually pass. So be a listener and just keep asking questions. And sometimes it might be beyond what a friend can do. So don't feel like it's all yours to handle either. It's okay to call someone else. It's okay to talk to them about seeking professional help. There are resources. 988 is our national crisis line. You can call or text that. And don't hesitate. If you feel like that is something that would be a great resource, don't question if it's bad enough to call. Just call. There are other resources to help you learn more about mental illnesses, how to help yourself, how to help others, to hear from others who have lived experiences. And one resource is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and their website, namihelps.org, has a number of resources, including classes that are held online that anyone can sign up for at no charge. The Minnesota chapter of NAMI also holds classes, and at times there are classes in our area, and other times there are classes offered online that you can sign up for. I've mentioned the Make It Okay website. It has a lot of information that is very good, including all of the talking tips that I've shared today. So if you'd like to see those tips for what to say and what not to say, you can find them there. Print them out, put them in your wallet, have them close by, so if those situations come up, you feel a little bit more prepared. And there's a podcast that Make It Okay had partnered with. They are no longer producing new episodes, but all their episodes are archived and are available on the website, Hilarious World of Depression, or on anywhere where you find your podcasts. And they just give you some insight into celebrities who sometimes have just nothing left to do but laugh at themselves. So check that one out as well. So how do we get help? Well, first, reduce the stigma. Open up the conversations. That helps us reduce stigma. If you yourself have dealt with a mental illness, share it with your family. Be brave. Break down that stigma. You can also leverage resources. Many employers offer employee assistance programs that can cover referrals to counseling and often a few free appointments. And in many cases, that help is also available for your family members. You can also talk to a human resources department to find out more about what is covered through your employer. You can talk to your family physician. Today's family physicians are trained in asking those questions and helping you navigate, whether it's getting you connected with resources like counseling, or maybe with a chemical imbalance, there's a conversation about prescriptions, and oftentimes a combination. There are many providers in our area offering different types of therapies, counseling, all types of resources, and there are online options now as well. The crisis line is available in our area, and that is a free service, and you can call that number 218-828-4357. There is also a warm line that runs from 5 at night until 9 in the morning. The dark hours sometimes are the really tough hours. And this is a line that's run by volunteers who have some lived experiences themselves and really can walk alongside you and just have those conversations when you really just need to talk to someone who understands. And that number is 844-739-6369. So that's the warm line. If you're in a crisis, you can call that National 988, or you can text that line. The other thing that we can do is to learn. And that's what you did by watching this video today. So kudos. We can talk about it. The more we talk about it, the closer we come to stopping the stigma. And we can share. And that's the challenge. It's for each of you to now go out and share this message. Open up conversations. Share where you're at personally. Talk to loved ones about where they're at with their mental health. And then remember that gratitude can really help us build resiliency. As I mentioned in the start of this video, Make It Okay was something that Crowing Energized had started to work with as we looked at opportunities to help those in our community build resiliency. And the research has shown that if you take the time every day to note 3 good things, it can change your brain patterns. If you go to the Crowing Energized website, crowingenergized.org, you can request 3 good things notepads where you can maybe set alongside your bed for morning or night, maybe have it at the dinner table and share with the family, and note every day 3 good things. Try that. Try that for a week. Try that for a month and see how that changes how your thought patterns are. So thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for thinking through this. And thank you for taking the time to reduce the stigma.